Big days of racing ahead. The Belmont Stakes Racing Festival at Saratoga. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tons of high quality horse racing action. And we're going to be here giving you previews and helping you out for a lot of that action Thursday, Friday, Saturday, probably even some Sunday stuff as well. My good friend Barry Spears joins me. Barry and I are going to take a look at the Friday late pick 4 because it's an all graded stakes pick 4, races 9, 10, 11, and 12. The grade 2 Intercontinental, we get a turf sprint. Then we get a mile on the turf for fillies and mares in the Just a Game. We get the New York grade 1 on the turf going a mile and a mile and 3/16, and then Barry, we finish things up with the Acorn, a mile and an eighth, grade 1. Some real quality in this pick 4 sequence.
Oh yeah, I mean this is a really tough one. I thought personally because there's a lot of chalks that you can play against, and if it chalks out, it might be disappointing, but it's still a really difficult sequence.
Now, if you need any help with Thursday races, we already have a video out. So if you're on YouTube, you can check out That's What G Said podcast on YouTube. The video will be up there for you. Barry and I take a look at the late pick 4 for Thursday and the 2 early stakes races on the card, races 2 and 4. So that's for Thursday. Friday, we're going to hit all the stakes. And then Saturday, there'll be a couple different videos out there for you. Barry's going to help me out with the early part of the card, and then we'll talk Belmont, and then I'll have a couple other guests help me out with the races that lead into the Belmont Stakes. So lots of different guests, some opinions on the Belmont. And like always, we'll be taking a look at the DRF past performances. We've got a lot going on at DRF right now. Barry, I mean, first off, over at DRF TV on the YouTube, they'll have previews of all the big races and everything for you. But when you're getting ready, they have the packages right now. So if you're watching this or listening on Wednesday, before the Thursday races, Friday, Saturday, Sunday packages for the PPs and the clocker reports for all 4 days all together, which save you a bunch of money. If you know you're going to be looking at all those races, you might as well just get the PPs right now and the clocker reports. Or you can go individually if you prefer, and you can just go for Saturday. You know, the PPs are available. You can purchase the package for Saturday. They'll give you the PPs, the betting strategies, and you can get the clocker report just for Saturday. So whatever you want, the 4 days or just for Saturday. Keep in mind, clocker reports individually for every single day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leading you in from Mike Welsh and the team. So a lot of these horses that are coming off of layoffs, maybe horses that didn't fire quite as well last time out. Was it the track? Was it something else? How are they feeling coming back into this race? And then the webinar, you get some great minds.
Man, all 3 of them
out, right? Yeah.
All 3 of them.
Right? Bayer, Chris, and then David's going to be hosting and giving some knowledge there. So that's going to be a blast. So just tons of products, tools, extra help for you. Just want to make sure that you're all prepped and ready to rock and roll. And then when you get a little bit, your handicapping done and you think about what you're going to be doing on Saturday, remember at ExpressBet at First Racing, they have the Belmont Stakes Challenge. It's another one of these big tournaments. This one costs $1,500 to buy in. So if that's a lot for you, it's a lot for many people to try to put in for an entry. You can qualify for $80 on Thursday or on Friday. So there are the NYRA $80 feeders Thursday and Friday at ExpressBet. Try to get in those for $80 and they'll qualify you for this tournament. This one is really cool. Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, NHC seats, and then cash prizes for the top 5. You also get a Pegasus World Cup Betting Championship seat or a California Crown. So a bunch of those future seats. I mean, it's just one of those big weekends, Barry, where we're going to be firing away all over the place, man. So much going on. I'm pumped.
Yeah, man, this is what we live for. It's kind of like a mini Breeders' Cup this next couple of days. It's right smack dab in the middle of the year, getting us ready for the races in the fall. It's a really good jump off point.
Timing wise, you hit it perfect too. And what ends up happening for, I think the Derby and the Belmont a lot of times now has becoming these also targets or maybe starting points for the really good horses, right? Where they start the second half of their years. Because a lot of these horses nowadays, you were pointing this out yesterday, they're not going to run all year. They're not going to be running 10 to 12 months throughout the year. They'll sort of run, they'll kind of like pick their 1 to 2 spurts that they're going to run in, right? For a few months at a time with a couple races. That's how a lot of horses are campaigned in the big races they target. So we'll see horses show up maybe with one race before Derby weekend, and then they'll run in one of those good undercard races on Derby or Oaks, or maybe that's where they start, and then they come back and run in another big one in this Belmont Festival, one of these big days, and then they kind of kick off the second half of their year. So we will see some really nice horses from Thursday, Friday, Saturday into Sunday, and the 9th race is no different from that statement, Barry, because we have to start the conversation with the pick 4 here in the Grade 2 Intercontinental with the number 6 Roses for Deborah, who is 8 for 12. She done so little wrong in her entire career. Last year, right before this point, she was about morphing into one of the best, if not right at the tip top of turf sprinters. And then she just didn't really fire on the yielding turf course at Parks. That was a really weird turf course that day. And then we can always be forgiving for horses in the Breeders' Cup. Things are different. And both of those races were against males also. So she comes back in her first start of the year. And that was a race that you and I talked about. And you had questions about her in that race because of the way she ended last year. It was like, was something wrong? Is she going to come back? Was she just really good for a little while? And then she came back this year with a Barry Spears angle, throwing up one of those buyers that's just as good as anything she's ever put in. So from a starting point, she's really tough. She likes Saratoga, and she's going to be a very short price in here, making her second start back off of a 6-month break.
Yeah. I mean, she's such a tough horse to beat, especially against other fillies. I mean, she's been real dominant, and it's kind of sneaky because you see the past performances and you see those optional claimer 40,000. Like, there's not really that many big kind
Options.
of for turf sprinters.
Nope.
So you'll see them dabble in those kind of races and kind of dominate them at times. It's just hard for me as a horse player to trust a horse like this, because she fires every time, and it's like, when's the shoe gonna fall off?
Yeah, she's earned almost 600,000. So she's just a tough horse on paper to knock a whole bunch but from a value based standpoint, she's always going to be overbet now because that's her reputation. She's really, really good. So if you can beat her in any of these races, you will definitely be rewarded and get some value. Talk to us about some others who you may see in here, others that you like. Can you beat her? Give me some others on the Barry Spears radar.
Yeah, there's quite a few in here that could have a chance. I mean, it's kind of odd because this race has some speed, but all the speed horses seem to be a little bit overmatched, other
Mm-hmm.
than a horse maybe like Coffee Maker, who just doesn't seem to make the jump up into this kind of class. It's really strange because that horse is really good, really fast, but whenever that horse gets in a graded stakes situation, it just doesn't run. He just doesn't run for whatever reason. She doesn't run. So there's alternatives here, like for instance, a horse that you know you would think would be in a prime spot would be a horse like Love Reigns, but I just think that horse and Roses for Deborah, they're kind of polar opposites. Love Reigns is going to be coming from way back, and the Roses for Deborah is going to be actually kind of probably be forwardly placed, not
Yeah.
actually on the lead. So I think the winner in this race is going to come from somewhere in between those two. So a horse like the one, Run for the Hills, had a brutal trip last time against Overcharge, who has a
Yep.
ton of speed and kind of dominates races. So I can forgive that effort. And this horse
And she's
closed
really
into a
honest.
quick pace. And people are going to shy away because of the races that she was running in, and then stepping up into Greatest Stakes Company. And her buyer numbers aren't the greatest. But I think this horse falls into a better trip here because of the pace situation where there's a lot of speed. Um, And I think, Jose Ortiz is going to actually ride this horse a little bit better and get this horse into the race sooner than the whole pullback thing they did last time. And it may have been because of the surface. It was yielding that day at Churchill on Oaks Day. So, we can forgive that one. And I think this horse could jump up and run a big race, just based on running style and how this race could play out. Another one is
Because she had
Futures
a
Now.
fine, she had a fine
Yeah.
start, right? Like her start was fine. She just had to kind of take back. It wasn't like she was really slow. And I think
No,
they
she
they
wasn't.
do have options. She's been more forward and tactical in a lot of her career, and she's just really honest. Like I have no problem with her
I
in this
mean,
race at
I
all.
think the thought was to kind of get off the rail.
Yep.
So they said we're going to take back and go
And then
around. And
we
the
can
horse
just
was like
give our
7 or 8 wide,
yeah.
and yeah, thinking that if the pace heats up, this
And it
horse is
almost
just going to
worked. I mean,
right.
she
It
closed
did.
well and but she just had a little too much to do. And the horse that she ran into is really nice. That winner, Ova Charged, is very, very good. We saw her come back and beat Louisiana Breds again. She's in the mix for me. I had her in like the third, fourth spots, and definitely a horse if you're playing pick fours and you're spreading and you're trying to beat Roses for Deborah. She's the type of horse you're wanting to use. And I know exactly where you were going. To me, I if this horse can sit that trip she did last time, that was and
Perfect
that's why
for
I
this
was
race.
able to kind of look back at her prior races and upgrade her a little more and say, okay, she's pretty lightly raced overall. She's
Mm,
only run 10 times, right? She's still just in the middle of her 4-year-old season here. So she's not like one of these other horses who's been around for all that long. And I do think that for a while, she hadn't shown us that she could really sit off yet. And you could in those races where she was behind Run for the Hills a couple times, it's like they were almost kind of trying, but she kind of got caught like in those in between spots where she couldn't really sit and she was sort of pressing. They finally actually just grabbed a hold last time. I think it was one of those situations where they thought they were in a field where they were probably better, so they
hmm
weren't as worried about going as fast or getting caught up. And maybe now that can just we can do that same thing again where, hey, we can take ourselves back, relax, and then push the button, just sit 2 lengths off because she fits here. I need to see her sit, and I have to use her in the pick four because she showed us that she could.
Right, and I think that's the reason I gave that one the upgrade is just like you said. She showed the ability to rate a little bit or just enough that she's not going to get swallowed up in that really hot pace up front. Gallon of Rush is another one that I think merits a big shot here. Although they're coming out of the same barn, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
barn as Roses for Deborah, but this horse had a couple of good races last year. In particular, one at Saratoga before this horse went on the bench and came back at Aqueduct August 11th last year. Um, the figure, again with the buy figures on turf aren't really that. Uh, I don't even know how to describe
Well,
it,
no,
but they're
sometimes
not
they're not as um
they're
just
not
like
as telling, you
I
know.
agree with you. Like you won't see, I don't think consistently big numbers. You'll either see really high numbers or sort of lower numbers in like the low 90s. They're just not like I probably the better way to describe it is I'm less bothered by buyer speed figures in turf sprints and turf route marathon races.
Right. Yes,
Those
absolutely.
because I think there's just less of a gauge overall for them. So sometimes they can be a little bit inaccurate. They're just less of those races. So the outliers can be a little bit, there's not as much of a body of work where we know how horses stack up at other levels very well. Oh, that horse fits here. This horse is more of a grade 3, a grade 2. You go from allowance races right up into the top turf sprints, just like you were talking about a lot of the time, because there's just not that much depth there. So I again, she was sort of right in that same kind of with Run for the Hills with me. Kind of like right behind that one, right in that same range where she's really honest and she's going to go second start now off of a long layoff. Another horse here where kind of look at her form overall. She's not done a whole lot of things wrong.
No.
Like her 10 turf starts, she's been out of the money in one of them. And
Yeah,
that
and
was what, going a
I
mile.
like this post position too. I think this post position in particular is probably going to be real advantageous because this horse is going to see a lot of horses on the inside kind of go, and this one can get to a nice little spot. And Pratt, like I said, his timing is as good as anyone's. He's going to have this one in the right spot for sure.
The one we didn't mention for me is the 7. I've just been so impressed with DeVoe over the last year and a half, and how well her horses have been running. And she just knows what she's doing. She's, she's just a really good horsewoman, horse person. And now this horse comes into her barn, was in the race with Run for the Hills and Overcharged, was 40-1 that day. And in the first start for the new barn, she runs her career high by her speed figure. And it doesn't, and here's the thing, like we're just kind of talking about similar. It doesn't really surprise me because this is a mare who spent a lot of her career at slightly lower level tracks, where just sometimes the speed figures aren't as overwhelming because the races aren't run as fast. You just don't have as horses who have run as big of figures, so those races aren't as fast. They're not graded as high. Canterbury, Remington, Will Rogers, you see for a lot of her career. She comes over to Churchill, faces some of the big gals, and she competes. And that's her career best. And now I'm wondering, wow, that was even on a yielding turf course. And who knows what it's going to be like this week. It could be rainy. We're hearing Thursday a little bit, Friday a little bit, and probably all the days, but not who knows how bad. Can she take a step forward? Second start now for this barn. She was about 5 lengths off or so. She was in the 2-pout. She tipped out. She closed with Run for the Hills, and that rival just had a little more late punch. And that was her first start in 5 months, and Run for the Hills just had a little bit more recency. If we're using the two of them as a gauge together, I'm same sort of thing. If you're trying to beat Roses for Deborah in this race, these are all the horses that we're talking about using. You're looking for these 10, 12-1 type horses here in this spot. And she is one who I think could take a little step forward here in the Grade 2 Intercontinental. Anything else? Anyone else you want to mention in here?
No, I think we got it all. I mean, this is a tough race to kick off a sequence because, it's almost like Roses for Deborah and the outside horse Love Reigns are, if you can find a way to get by both of them, this could be a really good lucrative race to bet.
Yeah. 5. The horses who I really would want to mention to include on most of your tickets would be the 5. Future Is Now for me, just because of that possibility of the speed right in the middle. Can she sit a little bit like she showed last time out? Because she is on the way up, and her speed figures really aren't far off competing, even with the horse like Roses for Deborah, if she can slightly improve off that. And she's in nice form right now. I kind of had her as my top tier horse. Barry, we kind of went right to Run for the Hills as another one who's got some versatility there too. So good luck in race number 9, the Intercontinental, as we move along to the Grade 1, Just a Game. So we have 7 horses in here, 5 Chad Browns, 4 horses from the Distaff Turf Mile. And it's just really tricky in races like this when the brown horses aren't that obvious with their running styles. I mean, I guess this one we can probably take an assumption, and that's what I'm trying to do. But it really wouldn't be a shock to see White Beam from the outside if they wanted to get more aggressive, right? Yeah. It just depends on who they want to get more aggressive, or do they just say, you know what? Let's just let them all run, right? They're all kind of versatile. Any of them don't need to lead. I think the one that should probably be the most aggressive, though, would be the 2, because it worked so well last time out from the outside. I think
it's
why
just
not
hard
do the same
to predict.
thing?
Yeah, it's just hard to predict to see the pace situation in this race. I mean, it really looks like there's really nobody other than the 2.
Right.
But it's also telling that Frankie doesn't ride back. He goes to a different horse.
Yep.
Another
Chad Brown horse, which is funny.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
But it's just a tough read. I personally think Capice is the horse.
Me too. I followed Frankie here. I think she's the one to beat.
Yeah, I think so also. I mean, this horse ran a bang-up race behind Inspiro back in October, and I don't think any of these horses could come that close to that horse. Maybe Chili Flag, but other than that, I really don't think any of the others could touch that horse.
So she's in the
Um,
race with Chili Flag, with Mission of Joy, with Evie Jets. The third place finisher, Delahaye. This is a nice filly. She just came back and won the Mint Julep at Churchill over the weekend and earned a 92 Beyer speed figure in doing so. And for Coppice, she had not raced since October of last year. So she was just making her first start as a 3-year-old, or as a 4-year-old. It was her first start in the US and her first start in 7 months. So she had all of those things up against her. She was a step slow. She settles 8th of 10. She's about 10 lengths off of it early, and she moves up nicely on the inside. She splits horses. She closes really well. She just got beat on the wire by a horse who's sharp and who's just got a little bit more recent form right now. And I just think she'll be tighter now. Dettori got a feel for her, and he's been on her and had really good success with her at Ascot and before. So now he's been on her here in the U.S. He's been on her, 4 or 5 times previously. I think she fits so well in here. But again, as we talk about the pace scenario, if she got, a little slow or a little flat-footed early on and there's not that much pace in here, she might be in a tough spot.
yeah.
You know?
It's such a hard read, and not to mention all these horses are probably going to be pretty close in the betting. So
Yeah.
it just makes it that much tougher. It's not like you're going to get, some overlay on Gina Romantica,
I don't think
or
so.
right. That's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like you're looking for a horse. You
Like
might
that.
get it on Chili Flag.
Yeah.
You might get it.
Because she's the one I got to say, she's the one who I don't think she's a Rodney Dangerfield. She doesn't get a lot of respect, at least from me. Like, she's the horse who I've tried to beat a couple times because I'm looking at her and she's not been as flashy, and her figures just sort of kind of creep up a little by little by little. But she just beat Coppice right on the square last time out. She was very good, and that was her 3rd win in 4 starts. And the only race she had a little bit of trouble, and that was in the Pegasus World Cup, the Filly and Mare Turf. She's pretty tough to knock recently. And I do agree with you. I could see her being 5-1 in this race, and Coppice and maybe even Gina Romantica, White Beam, Beau Cattache, all ticking down a little bit or staying at their price, and her
Yeah.
floating up.
Yeah, and one thing I do know is Mission of Joy is not going to be bet very much, and I think this horse has a good shot. If you look at her races last year,
Yep.
She was really coming into her own before the layoff, then got stuck on the outside in her 2 races this year. I'm not going to hold that against her.
Can she be
She,
the one to be more aggressive
I
here?
think they might have to,
Right?
and
Look
Johnny
when
V is
she
the
did
guy to
well.
do it. Yeah,
Exactly. Look at her races when she's run well, even in the QE2. She's sitting 3rd. She's 2nd early. She's pressing it. She's sitting 3rd. She's not far off of it. Last year, when she's in the Regret, she wins that race. She's sitting close. Prior to that, when she wins her 2nd start at Tampa, she's right there on the lead. She can do that. They just started getting a little more sitting and patient with her. And like you said, she had a couple wide draws. So in those situations, sometimes you don't have any choice.
yeah. I think she was just caught out
There's
in
nothing
no
you can
man's
do.
land. Yeah,
Um,
and the other question mark is obviously the distance. I don't know if a mile is their best distance either. That could be a concern, but you're going to get your price. So it might not be that big of a risk, given the price situation or what she's going to be at post time.
the 2 and the 1 I were the ones I thought from a pace standpoint were really interesting, because I don't think White Beam wants to go. I think White Beam's fine sitting right off of either of these horses or whomever decides to go. And for Beau Cattache, it's not as if last year she was bad. And it's not as if she's like a one-dimensional need the lead horse. She can sit off horses and pass horses fine. She was very competitive in all of her races last year. She's a really nice mare, making her 2nd start at 5. So a lot of times we see this exactly happen with the mares. They get from 4 to 5, they get the opportunity to mature a little bit. They get even better. And I had the 4 Coppice on top as my top tier. Below that, I had the 2, the 4, or the 2, the 7, and the 1, who actually we've mentioned. because
Yeah.
Mission of Joy is the real wild card. I can absolutely see the 2 being on the lead. And then White Beam, oh, that was the race. Look, we got to show the last part of this race again, because
Yeah,
this
because
was the race that Joel, we got to give it to him, because we
White
all
Beam. Goes in.
we're all critical of riders. I'm the first. I watch a ton of trips, so I'm looking at trips and I'm always, oh, what do you do? Oh, how do you do? But man, when you get really good at their craft and you see them excel at it, it's just fun to watch. So White Beam's a 5 in here. She's 1-2. Keep in mind she's making her first start back since December, so her first start in like 5 plus months, and they're battling up front with the 3, Spirit and Glory. So the 2 of them for most of this race are just up front, kind of lengths ahead, and turning for home, still ahead. And to the outside, it looks like White Beam, as your favorite, is kind of putting the horse to the inside away. The horse from the inside's digging down, but you kind of just felt like White Beam probably always had this horse measured. And White Beam loses, but it's not to the horse on the inside. Here comes Joel on the outside, and just with a
See that,
perfect,
that's the kind of trip that I envision White Beam getting and getting swallowed up again.
yeah,
Because it's just this horse doesn't, like you said, doesn't really want the lead, but doesn't want to be too far back, and
that's
it's
hard.
hard to push by horses like that and stay on, because they're not going to sprint too far clear. They did it in that race. It was a smaller type field. It was only 5 horses in that race, and you know, but this is 7, and it's tough. And you got some closers here that are really going to be moving late, like Mission of Joy, maybe. Gina Romantica has a good late kick. Coppice, all these horses are going to be flying late.
Yep. If I had to pick one in here, we both started with Coppice.
Yeah, that would be my top choice in this.
That'd be the one for me as well. As we move to race number 11, let's talk about the Grade 1 New York Fillies and Mares 4-year-olds and up, $750,000 up for grabs in Grade 1 status here, and some real quality in this one. You have the 2 English Rose for Charles Appleby, who came over, was the runner-up in the Jenny Wiley behind Beau Cachet, who we were just talking about in the race prior to this. Didia, 3rd place finisher, was right next door. That's the Pegasus Filly and Mare World Cup winner, Didia. She's just real quality, a 10-time winner, this mare. Others in here who are kind of interesting. Wild card, you have some horses this weekend from Thursday through coming in from Joseph O'Brien that look really nice on paper and have faced top-tier company. This horse has come over to Saratoga previously and got a run over the turf course here, and since then has been facing top-notch company. Fev Rover had a really nice year last year. Fev Rover was in some strong races and then just found the Breeders' Cup a little bit too tough there. We saw Nietzsche Marie come flying with Joel late to get by White Beam when we just watched that replay a moment ago. Barry and I, we've talked about Sparkle Blue a couple times over at Tampa there. And then Warlike Goddess is one that we've all known for the last few years. 11-time winning mare. She loves to come from way out of it, though. That's been one of her knocks, and the way she gets beat sometimes coming from so far back. I'd imagine the horses that will take a lot of the money battling between the 2 and the 3, probably English Rose and Didia, who were right next to each other in that Jenny Wiley.
I'm not sure about Didia, but definitely sure about English Rose. I know they're going to bet this one off the board. 3-1 is a real conservative morning line. I think this horse is probably going to be closer to 9-5. But that being said, the horse hasn't really done anything wrong. Just
yeah.
And it's interesting because I do like Didia, but only at a certain price.
Sure. Here's the 5 and the 9 as you're talking. They were 5 and the 9 in the Jenny Wiley, where they were chasing Beau Cachet. You can see the 10 gets to the lead, and the 5 and the 9 are close. Didia is the 9. English Rose is the 5. English Rose is actually in front of Didia, but they do a pretty good job with Ortiz and pinning in English Rose. And you can see English Rose was a little wanting to go early on, right? Yeah, like having a tough time settling down. Right here, they did a good job making sure Didia would move right up to the outside and not let English Rose get off. So, these 2 just kind of sit a really nice trip. There's not a lot of passing in this race, Barry. But, yeah, I agree with you. It comes a lot down to the price. I mean, they're both really nice filly and then a mare with Didia.
Yeah, I'm just not too keen on Diddy's chances because I think her drawing outside of English Rose again is going to be a little bit of a detriment because even if, let's say, English Rose goes to the lead, what really could Didia do other than press?
And when you're watching this race, right? Like right here, you're wondering how Didia gets beat by the 5. I'm not how, but just this is as good of a positioning in a race as Didia would have got. Maybe you can say, okay, she looms up, she takes a shot at the pace setter, but I mean, Didia got the better of the trips here. The 5 got
Absolutely.
pinned in and had to kind of back up, shuffle, and still was able to pass Didia. I like Didia a lot as a mare. I just, when I'm watching this race, though, I had a really tough time looking at it and wanting to upgrade her over English Rose unless it really is 2 to 3 times the price, like double the price.
Right. That's really
That's
my
the key.
concern.
5 to
Yes.
2 to 5 to 1, right? Can we get something like that? Then I can put them on even terms. But if they're close in price at all, didn't you come out of that race thinking, man, the 5 could have been closer maybe and ran a little bit better there? Or if those trips were flipped, I think the 5 would have finished second at
Yeah, I
least.
think it kind of looked like Buick kind of dropped the ball a little bit and let the
Did he
10
kind
go
of
out. No, let Book Cachet go.
so
You can
slow?
see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see him wrangle the horse back early, and he let Frankie get the lead. He thought he had him, but they were going just so slow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those
Good,
things like
good
almost like a
jock, good
harness race.
finisher. Yep. You
Right.
sometimes you just you let any solid horse get a little too comfortable out front, you're losing. Like nobody's unbeatable in any race like this. And so I so we're the way we're kind of talking it out. Do you expect to see English Rose more aggressively handled in here?
Yes, I think the horse is probably in a better spot all the way around, whether it's post
Inside draw.
position. You're right, post position, everything else. This horse will probably want to try to dominate this race, start to finish.
Because
Um,
and honestly,
I
where
mean,
is the other
Fev
pace pressure
Rover
coming from? But
maybe,
but
but I don't
she
think that horse is quick enough.
what and you're right, maybe, right? That could be one of the others, but just like you said, she just might not even be fast enough
Yeah,
early. Like she just might be a horse that's a little bit more of a faster, going a little longer, or can sit. But I don't know if she's as fast as English Rose. The horse who I'm going to use because of the way we're talking about it is the 5, American
mm,
Sonia, because she actually sat a perfect trip in that race at Longchamp last time out. So she was tracking from the inside. She was just behind the leader. She was sitting second, third, a length off. They asked, she responded. She opens up 3. She's now going to go second start off a 7+ month break, second start at 4. She knows Saratoga. She's got a jock aboard who stole the race that these horses were in. Dettori was on Beau Cachet in front of Didia and English Rose. So I'm not necessarily saying that means he's going to be in front of them again with American Sonia, but if English Rose goes and he can sit right behind, and for some reason this horse doesn't want to go this far because, this is a little bit farther than we've seen her get. We saw her get the mile in an eighth. Now she'll try to show she can get a mile in 3/16 here. I'm going to use the 5 at, I think, a fair price. And just starting to go through the form overall, Barry, there aren't bad races with this horse.
no.
She
I mean,
shows up.
she shows up, and the only thing that if you could knock this horse on would be the class
Yeah, we
she was
don't we don't
running she
know.
was running with overseas. That's really
Mhm.
the question mark because if you look at the past performances and you look at the 2 horse English Rose, that horse has
No,
been running in every premier meet
no comparison.
ever across the world.
Yeah, no
Uh,
comparison to where the horse, like the quality from, I think, what they've faced. And yeah, that's the question. And where I think, to me, the real reason why was, as we're getting at, is the trip. Because if she can just put herself in a good spot, that's half the battle right there in this race.
yeah, it definitely
Sitting
is. But the
top
pro,
3 to 4,
I think that there's going to be a log jam for those
same
for that
spots.
second flight.
Hmm.
I still I haven't jumped off the Aspen Grove train yet.
She's quality,
Um,
man.
and
Her
and
races this year are not bad.
no, that's what I mean. And she was compromised both times. Like it had terrible trips.
So
The one at
slow
Tampa was
fractions.
so slow,
Yep.
and you know,
And then
and
she
in
made that
closing,
huge wide move. She had to move wide, and she ran really well that day. And then she came right back again and stepped forward again slightly. Those are her two career best races.
right? And I think she's kind of leveled up a little bit. She just needs the right kind of scenario, and I think this might be the one, because I don't project her to be too far out, but I don't think the pace is going to be super slow like the last two races she was in. So she'll have a better shot. Just trying to close. I think she merits a good shot at a big price. And Warlike Goddess is another one. You gotta have to think this horse has still got something left. Imagine getting 5-1 on her in any race, let
Yeah.
alone this one. I mean, if you look down her past performances, there was not many times she was over 2-1.
No, not many times she doesn't fire.
Right, she runs
And
every
you know
time.
what you're gonna get from her.
Hmm.
It's just, do they go too slow? Is it a field that's maybe a little too classy? She's faced the boys her last few times. Now she's back in again with the gals.
That's
So
3 wins at Saratoga also. It's gotta count for something when a
mhm,
lot of these horses haven't run there.
yep.
I would give that one a nod, especially being overlooked. She's
She
7
could,
now. She
yep.
hasn't been running lately, so she's not fresh on everybody's mind. I think her price is gonna drift up a little. She might be the value here.
And from a connection standpoint, this is a barn that does not bring them back if they don't need to be brought back.
Yep.
This is a barn that's not forcing horses into doing things, and a barn that's done very well in recent years with horses just like this, getting a little bit older, with horses that they figure out as they get a little bit older, or like Goddess in a really contentious group. I mean, going all the way through, strong field, quality and quantity in the grade one New York. Let's finish up the pick four sequence on Friday. Let's finish up the Friday card. I like mentioning we are talking about the pick four because it's the 4 graded stakes races that close it out. I always point out when we aren't going to go through the race, but if you're someone who can play the pick fives that are better takeout, just that's my recommendation. If you're someone who plays and plays often, yes, a pick four is harder to hit than a pick five, but if you hit them even at a less frequent rate with the lower takeout most places, it'll be more worth it. You'll make more money. And as gamblers and handicappers and horse players, the goal is not to win, as the winning percentage is kind of meaningless. It's more about the ROI at the end of the day. So sometimes I like to just remind people, if we can get out of that mindset where I want to pick a winner, I want to cash a ticket. You know what? If there are 2 or 3 races where if you get out of that mindset and you just win one of them, instead of cashing 2 of them, you'll make more money. If you're entering the no chalk zone here that we like to enter many a times.
Yeah, man. This last race, the Acorn, is a doozy, man. This is a tough race. It's not a given
We got 6
for
from the Oaks.
yeah, it's not a given for Torpedo Anna.
Because we knew it was a tough Oaks. We were all singing the praises of how strong the field was going into it. And Torpedo Anna won. Absolutely. So she deserves right now to be at the top of this group, because when the group all faced, she beat them. But it was on a sloppy track. She got the lead that day and didn't have much other pressure. So until she does this a couple of times against this group, just like you said, I don't think that she's unbeatable or that some of these fillies can't turn the tables on her. There's some quality in here.
Yeah,
And
I
go
just
ahead,
don't
start us off.
I just don't think, horses like My Main Squeeze, Where's My Ring, Gun Song are gonna let Torpedo Anna just go. Yeah, I mean, if they do, I'll be very, very shocked because
Yeah.
they saw that race. Most of these horses were in that race. The
When
connection saw it. There's no way they can let this horse just roll on the front end.
it'll be a little different for her too now, because remember, when we were looking at the 14 horse race of the Kentucky Oaks, one thing we all kept talking about was, gosh, a lot of these fillies have the same kind of running style where they all want to be kind of just off the lead. And a bunch of these horses that are going to be to the outside, they're going to get hooked wide and they're going to really be compromised there. Horses like Just FYI and Leslie's Rose and the ones that were way out wide, they were just getting parked. we were wondering, okay, who's going to be one of the horses down to the inside that gets the best trip? Well, that was Torpedo Anna. She was the number 5 that day in post 4. Now, she's in the 9 hole here. It's not post 14. It's not 20 in the Derby, but now everybody to the inside of her basically has the tables turned on her from the Oaks. Like all of these horses in the Oaks were the ones that we thought were going to be showing speed were drawn to the outside of her, right? And now just FYI, Leslie's Rose, Power Squeeze even, they're all to the inside. Can they hold their position a little bit better and force her to go wide? And you were pointing out the other ones like My Main Squeeze, Where's My Ring? Regulatory Risk had shown speed before. Gunsong. I think she's going to be wide. She can absolutely win this race. I would be shocked if it's cruising on the front end like it was in the Oaks.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really difficult race. And honestly, Leslie's Rose is the horse that I'm fixated on because
me too.
I think
I was so against her in the last race, right?
Yeah,
I was totally against her in the
her post position, the wet track may have compromised her, but her body of work is just as good as Torpedo Anna, if not better. And if we get an inflated price, I doubt we'll get 5-1. But 3-1, I'm on board.
I like her a lot in this spot. I mean, you go through her career, her first 2 were good. It's a little disappointing in the Devona Dale. It wasn't an awful race, but she just was a little bit flat when she was sitting. And then the Ashland was the race for her because she was dismissed on the board. People, including me and others, were like, okay, maybe she just had a couple of good races early in her career and she's not quite that good. And she earned a big speed figure. She beat some nice fillies in the Ashland. And she went into the Oaks, and you just, as soon as that post draw came up, when she was coming off of monster race, you just felt like there's no way she can get the type of trip she got last time. And now she gets the inside draw again, post 3, just where she got in the Ashland, where she could maybe sit that same kind of trip again.
Yeah, I think that's the tale of 2 races, you know. It wouldn't surprise me if you see the reversal and Leslie Rose gets the trip that she wants and Torpedo Anna doesn't.
Is the one that's wide.
Yep.
And you just might get 5 times the price on Leslie's Rose as you might on Torpedo Anna. Just FYI is obviously super honest. You know, she has just continued to step forward in all of her races. She was really wide last time out. The thing with her, when I watch her now, I feel like when we play these races with her, if I were to have to pick one horse who is like the safest to hit the board, it would be her most times. But I almost always feel like there are all these other horses who are a little bit more high floor, low ceiling horses, and one of them will hit their ceiling in these races and just have a better, like Torpedo Anna will just be a little flashier. Can Leslie's Rose bounce back now? She's not as consistent, but her ceiling might be higher than just FYI. You know, a horse like Gunsong was pretty impressive in the Black Eyed Susan. I don't know if she has that high of a ceiling, but My Main Squeeze is one who, you know, we haven't seen do much wrong. So I don't really have any knocks on her, Barry, but I always feel like she might run into someone like a little flashier. And if they run their best race, it's probably a little better than hers. She's just so consistent that I have a hard time completely dismissing her.
Yeah, she's a tough read because there's like something that, you know, my gut is telling me that we've seen the best of her already.
Me too. That she's plateaued. That doesn't mean that she can't hit the board and run well here, but I don't know if she's going to keep getting that much faster and better right now.
And it doesn't look like it. I mean, maybe it's her running style. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel like she has another jump up in her, or at least not right now. Yeah. It's not saying that it couldn't come at age 4 if they keep running her, stuff like that. But at least in the present, in this race at this time, at least to me, she doesn't feel like she's you know, ready to kind of break out. She might be down the road, you know what I mean? They might get her ready specifically just for the Breeders' Cup. And that would be perfect, I'm sure, for the connections. But for right now, I don't feel confident in her at 5-2. Maybe at 6-1.
Me too. Same thing.
But
because
I don't
she's
think you're going to
short.
get a price that
No,
like
because
that.
she gets
You know,
bet and she's honest and people know her. She's a Breeders' Cup winner. She's been in a lot of big races. Um,
she's always a lukewarm kind of horse, like
yeah.
everybody, 3-4 to 1 ish,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, she jumps up and win. You're like, damn, I should have had her. But then when she doesn't win, it's like, wow, I'm glad I stayed away because it was really enticing,
The horse who I
Um,
think I'm going to be using in a lot of tickets too is one you were hitting on. Is My Main Squeeze. I
yes,
don't. She just doesn't have many things to knock. It's kind of funny. She was favored over Torpedo Anna in that fantasy race.
yep.
Remember, because Torpedo Anna was making her first start of the year, and My Main Squeeze was in really nice form. And then My Main Squeeze was bouncing
Freaked
around
out at the gate. I thought
week
they were
4.
actually going to scratch
Me
that horse
too.
that day.
Just put a line right through that race. If you can do that, the question we had about her was she just doing this against New York breds, or was she good enough to step out and do it against open company, against better horses? Well, she answered that question last time. She beat legitimate horses in the 8 bells. They weren't quite at this level, but it wasn't just her being a New York bred thing. And she's pretty versatile. I think this trip might be a little farther than what she wants, but she'll be kind of forward in here. And she's another one that'll be trying to push Torpedo Anna out more.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really kind of their only shot is to get to that spot before she does,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why I'm still not gonna give up on Power Squeeze either,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that one can sit a good trip. Obviously the Oaks is a kind of unique little race, and you can see all the outside horses. I think 3 of them are in here. They were all compromised.
Yep.
Leslie's Rose was in the 13 hole that day.
Look
Power
at
Squeeze
the
was in
two,
the
three, four.
11.
2, 3,
Right.
4. They were 11,
Just
13.
FYI, right.
Yeah.
They just FYI ran the best out of them, but also had the cleanest trip. So it's tough. I mean, I respect Just FYI, but man, this horse is going to be second choice in this race, or maybe even favored. I can see that happening too, just based on how this has played out. Might be a little bit too short, so I'm looking for alternatives to both of those horses, that ran 1-2 in the Oaks.
Look at her races when she was able to save ground down inside and then make that move. Power Squeeze. If you liked her going into the Oaks, I think you were kind of getting to a thought that I had percolating in my head. That was, if you like a horse before a race like the Oaks or the Derby, maybe some of the Triple Crown races, there are a few of those bigger races that are sort of different with being on a big stage. The way that you go into those races are different. The timing's different. The setup's different. The walkover's different, right? All that stuff. There's some of those races that you can just completely toss for horses when they run poorly. And the Oaks is one of them. So for, horses that ran poorly in the Oaks or the Derby that you saw and that you may have liked going in there, if they're coming into their next race, fine, don't worry about it. Don't Breeders' Cup races use like that. Races where horses go over to Dubai or Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
use like that. If they just run so bad to believe, just dismiss it. Don't use that as like an average and an aggregate in their form to bring their form down overall. Just know that, that was a race where this horse Drew post 11 was hooked way out wide. The track was sloppy. Torpedo Anna went wire to wire. Just put a line right through it. Let's use her off of her form coming out of the Gulfstream Park Oaks. Barry and I both started with Leslie's Rose. Yeah, I mean, if she's 7-2 above, to me, that's the play. No doubt about it. I just feel like you're going to get that bounce back, much better performance from her here in a challenging way to end the Friday card at Saratoga. Race 12 is the Grade 1 Acorn from inside to outside. Yeah, you pointed out Where's My Ring a few times. She shouldn't be too far out of it. Her best races have been right on the lead and sitting just off the lead. So she's got to be right there. Regulatory Risk was third actually in the Oaks behind Torpedo Anna, and just FYI. And then Gunsong comes back in 3 weeks. She won the Black Eyed Susan against a kind of a soft field though, right? When we handicapped that race, we liked Gunsong, and I think we said exactly she's going to be favored.
Yep.
She was 9-2 on the morning line. She went off I think she opened up at 8-5 or so, and she went off just under 5-2, and she just looked like a winner all the way around. But there are the whole field in here is tougher than what she faced last time out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Top to
know,
bottom, way
just
better.
like every single one of these fillies. So I just got to see a little bit more from her there. That is Friday as we finish things up. But Barry, you will be back with me to talk about Saturday, and the big race on Saturday is the Belmont. Here's a look at the field lining up for the Belmont. So we'll talk a little bit more about this race, Barry, and some of the other Saturday races. But if there are any folks out there that maybe they just hear the Friday show or they just watch the Friday video and they want a thought or two on the Belmont, where you sit right now, Tuesday, still a few days out, talk to us about some of the horses that you want to use, or give us a minute or two of your thoughts on the Belmont.
Yeah, it's a really interesting race. And I think it's a lot more wide open than people want to give it credit for. Uh, Seize the Gray is obviously the kind of hot horse. Ran very well the last two. It wouldn't surprise me if that horse kind of does the same thing. Resilience, another one, ran very, very well in the Derby, coming back a little under the radar. I think Mystic Dan might bounce back, and also the Wine Steward. I like that horse last year going into the Breeders' Cup. He was scratched. He came back and ran two really, really good races. I know people are going to kind of poo-poo him a little bit because he kind of, loomed up last time and faded. But I think that horse was off so long that
Third start back off the bench.
needed those two races. And this probably sets him up for his, kind of peak performance. And I expect that out of him in a race that's, to me, completely wide open.
This is a good Belmont. And for whatever your stance is on changing the Triple Crown, let me just say, I personally wouldn't change it myself, but I'm not one that's really dead set either way, one or the other. But what I will say is, just because they had to do it this year, since the Belmont construction and this race is at Saratoga, this race absolutely has at least 3 more horses in it than it would have if it was at a 1.5 miles.
Absolutely.
I don't think you would get Resilience. I don't think you would
wouldn't
get
the Wine
Steward, and I don't think you would get Mind Frame.
Yep.
You may not get Mind Frame, depending on what they did with some of their other horses. You'd get 7 to 8. And
Mind Frame at 7 to 2 is kind of absurd. Just saying.
He is such an interesting horse because
he's nice. Yeah, you can tell he's nice.
Like, he could absolutely win and win very easily. It's just the price that you're willing to take with the connections. You were, I'm not really in a strong opinion quite yet. The more I'm getting to, I will probably have Resilience in tickets. I did like the big kind of loom up move, working really well. And I agree. Dan, I think, is just really solid right now. Like, Mystic Dan is just really solid right now. Really versatile, really honest, comes right back. He can get the jump. If you're having him as, in the top tier of the 3-year-olds, I think what's nice about him versus a horse like Sierra Leone is you just feel like Mystic Dan will get a much better trip. He works out a trip for himself a lot better than a horse like Sierra Leone, who comes closing. They make a rider change there. They change some equipment there. I will say, I will probably have on my pick 4s or pick 5s, I probably will have Mind Frame, because Mind Frame is like one of those Ricky Bobby horses to where he could be, there's versions of the race where he's just really good. And then there's other versions of the race where he's just nowhere to be found. And kind of what we were saying about Just FYI, he's kind of like the opposite to me. If I had to pick one horse in this race who I was very confident would hit the board, it wouldn't be Mind Frame. He would be a very high ceiling, low floor horse. To me, that horse in here is Mystic Dan. Again, just like, been really impressed with him, and really, even in his defeat in the Preakness, because he just didn't really get much help up front. Seize the Gray was cruising. Seize the Gray took advantage. And I don't think that's going to be the case in here with the Wine Steward, with Dornick, with Mind Frame. I think between those 3 horses, I would be pretty surprised if Seize the Gray is just out there loose loping along.
Well, the thing that people don't really mention a lot about the way horses in their races are spread out these days is that you get this kind of race where, let's say 10, 15 years ago, these horses would have ran against each other a few times. So they
Uh-huh.
know, their tendencies, they know
It's
the
a
other
great
connections
point.
and what they're going to do. It makes it that much tougher when they don't face each other much because you could throw a curveball and, let's say, you know, Dornock all of a sudden wants to go to the front and go real fast on the engine. It's going to open this race up.
Mhm.
And I think you can play these kind of cat and mouse games like this now because they don't see each other as often. So it really makes for an interesting kind of race because, even a horse like Mindframe, where's this horse going to go?
What's the trip they want? They
Right.
don't
What
wanna
what are they gonna
be
do? They
they
really don't
wanna
want the lead, but they may
use
up
their
ending on the
speed
lead.
and use the speed enough to sit close, but then you gotta make that decision pretty early if you're wide, right?
Oh yeah.
AKA, "Hey, I can't be sitting out here, I gotta go." So then, like you're saying, then what if that happens with Mindframe? Sees the Gray, the 1 is holding the position down inside, and then in the middle of the pack, Dornick's like, "I'm going." Smaller field, I'm making sure I'm there. Then you got 3 horses that are pretty dead set on the front end, you
Well,
know?
that's like what we're used to seeing actually in the Belmont. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
you're right.
remember, going back, you see horses make these strange moves middle of the race
Mhm.
and get to the lead and then kind of try to go on with it and they
And the
they end up,
muddies the whole
you know,
pace up, right?
right, and it changes the whole entire race. I think, something like that was how who was it? I think it was Lemon Drop Kid. There was like a couple of horses that made moves, and that one just kind of stayed to the rail and kept running. So it's really strange how this is going to play out. I think it makes for a good race and B for a very wide open race.
Barry, my friend, thank you so much, buddy. Thursday in the books. We've got you taken care of. So while you're getting ready for Thursday, throw on our video in the background. You can find it on YouTube or any social medias that you need. And then for Friday now, we've got you taken care of with all 4 of the graded stakes races and the late pick 4 sequence. Everything you need to succeed for the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Past performances, clocker reports, betting strategies for Saturday. Shop.drf.com. Barry, you will be back with me to talk some Saturday Belmont on the undercard, and then we'll kind of revisit the Belmont a little bit more for some of the folks who are tuning in to that show. Thank you so much, man. I always appreciate it. All the hard work that you put in. You're literally the Batman for me. I throw out the signal. I shoot you a text, whatever track, whatever sequence, however many races, whatever time. Very rarely is it anything other than you got it, man. Whatever you need, let's do it. So,
Let's
man,
suit up. Let's go.
absolutely, let's do it. So, thank you, man. It makes my life easier all the time when I know I always got someone there that's going to put the work in. We can go back and forth, and it's all to try to help all of you out there, to try to hope that we can help lead you in the right direction. The way that we play the races, we're not usually putting out tickets as much because things change in the few days leading up to it. And I think we try to do a good job of talking about different horses and what might happen if different versions of the race were run. More than anything, we want to try to lead you to 1 or 2 of these 5 to 10 to 1 horses. Those are the horses that are going to make your pick 4, your pick 5, horses that might not be on everyone's radar, that other people may not be looking at. Because that's how, when I'm playing, when I'm looking around and listening, those are the horses that I'm looking for from other people. And those are the ones that help me where it's like, oh, man, Barry mentioned that horse in that race I wasn't going to use, and I'm looking, this horse is 6 or 8 to 1. I got to throw this horse in for sure. And that's always what I've wanted the content that I do to kind of be like, because I think that's the most helpful to people. Can you find a horse for them that they can add, not necessarily tell someone, hey, here, go play my $60 ticket verbatim. Exactly.
Right. And that's the key that's how I learned how to sniff
Me
out
too.
these long shots and it's so invaluable because these days you see a lot of chalk winning and you got to pick your spots and make it count and when you can and do it's all that much better.
We're hoping that we can help you make it count a few times this week at Saratoga. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us. We're going to be following Barry on social media. We always give him a follow on Twitter at Urban, URBN handicapper, and give me a follow. It's me, Gino B, on Twitter. And if you're checking this out on YouTube, if you can, subscribe to this, because that way every time we do videos, they'll immediately be delivered to you. And I'm going to be posting a lot more of these videos, especially with the summer coming up. Del Mar, Saratoga, you'll get a lot of that real quality racing in the next few months. So if you like it and if you subscribe to it, it'll help share it around a little bit more with the folks out there. We'll be back with more Barry, talking some Friday undercard. Good luck, or talking some Saturday undercard. Good luck to everybody on the Friday card over at the Belmont Racing Festival at Saratoga.